Hey everyone, I'm Jonah,
I'm Connor.
and welcome back to Rank and File Sports. After a disappointing season in 2024, which saw the Bearcats going 5-7, Cincinnati is bringing back Brendan Sorsby at the quarterback position after 2,800 passing yards last year and 18 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Overall, I think the Bearcats are probably going to be in a pretty similar situation as last season, with a little bit more of a difficult schedule, though. We could potentially see a decrease in wins for Cincinnati. Looking at that schedule, it starts off with a neutral site game against Nebraska, as well as Kansas and Iowa State, uh, Baylor, BYU, and TCU as some very difficult Big 12 matchups. It is not looking very bright for Cincinnati in 2025. They do have 7 games at home, only 4 road games, which is going to help a little bit. But overall, the schedule difficulty is going to be 4.5 out of 10.
Like Jonah was saying, starting the season off with a neutral site game at Arrowhead against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I didn't even know that this was scheduled, but should be interesting. I'm sure Nebraska fans, having sold out their stadium for the last 5 decades, is gonna carry over to Arrowhead, and Arrowhead is most certainly going to sell out and primarily be Nebraska fans, but Nebraska with Dylan Raiola, Mini Mahomes, is going to be the better team, the more talented team. I don't really see Cincinnati being much of a challenge in this one, but just because it is that week 0 game, maybe they have a little bit more of a chance here. So I'm not going to rule it out as an impossibility, but Nebraska will be favored in this one, giving the Bearcats a 35% chance to start the season off with a win. Then they will face Bowling Green. Bowling Green had a very solid season last year. Obviously, their best player was Harold Fannin Jr., who did just about everything and was arguably could have made a case for best wide receiver in the league, even though he was a tight end, but he had the stats to back it up. Did just about everything, but he is currently in the NFL draft, should be a fairly highly touted prospect for the NFL draft. Overall, Bowling Green is going to be significantly worse than they were last season because they're losing Harold Fannin Jr., but I'm sure they have a good amount of people coming back after that solid season. Scheme's going to be similar. I could see this Bowling Green team still being a decent team, especially against a team like Cincinnati that we don't really know a whole lot about and had a very disappointing season, like Jonah was saying earlier. I'm gonna favor Swordsby returning and hopefully having just a little bit more development. They do have a lot of guys from the receiver room returning, and most likely having Evan Pryor as their lead back. This offense should be pretty solid, and I think they'll get the job done against Bowling Green. Northwestern State, not much needs to be said here. 100% chance for the Bearcats in this one, going in their bye week with a win.
After that bye week, they start Big 12 play with the first game being at Kansas. Obviously, the big story for Kansas, can Jalen Daniels finally break through and have that good season that everybody's really been expecting him to? I know one guy who picked Jalen Daniels as his Heisman winner for last season in the preseason. Obviously, did not happen. Um, I really do think that he is a talented player, and Kansas's season does really depend on Jalen Daniels. That being said, for this game, I still think Kansas will win, probably no matter what we see out of Jalen Daniels. Only a 25% chance for Cincinnati here. After that, back at home to face Iowa State, the Cyclones came just short of the college football playoffs last season, losing in a blowout loss to Arizona State in the Big 12 championship game. They are going to be really solid again this season. So definitely another really tough game for Cincinnati. Once again, only a 25% chance to win. Then UCF at home. This is definitely much more of a winnable game for Cincinnati. Right, it's about 70%. maybe a little bit generous towards the Bearcats, but they're probably going to win at least one Big 12 game this year. So there's a pretty good chance that it'll be UCF if it has to be one of these teams. Um, After that, Oklahoma State on the road. I think just based on what we saw last year, Oklahoma State is going to have another pretty tough season. This one, we're going to give Cincinnati about a 65% chance to win, even though it's on the road. Just really, really bad season from the Cowboys last year. And I think there's a chance that Cincinnati's able to pull off a road potentially upset. Tough to say who will actually be favored in this game when it does, in fact, come around. Then you have Baylor at home, and we are very high on this Baylor team. The Bears bringing back a ton of players on offense, and overall should be improved from the 8-4 season we saw last year. So I do think that Cincinnati probably doesn't have much of a chance here, even though it's only a 35% chance of a win there. And then finally, before their second bye week, a road trip to face Utah, another very disappointing team last season. And even though the Utes have home field advantage, Cincinnati has a pretty good shot here at about a 45% chance to pull off a road victory.
After that final bye week, they will be hosting the Wildcats of Arizona. Arizona, kind of a similar boat to teams like Utah and Cincinnati. Very underperforming team. They did not have a very successful season, despite having a very solid quarterback who will be returning in Noah Fifita, but they're losing their top 10 NFL draft pick, or at least that's what he was predicted going into the NFL draft in Tetaroa McMillan. And it's going to be hard to replace him at wide receiver, but with Fafita returning, it's going to be a little bit more favorable for Arizona. But Cincinnati did finish ahead of them in the Big 12 standings last year. So to me, that just shows how Arizona just isn't as competitive as we all think they should be. So I am going to favor Cincinnati a little bit in this game just because they will be playing at home. But this is really a 50-50 shot. You could lean Fafita if you think he is better than Sorsby, but the home field advantage might play a key factor in this one. Really could go either way, but we're going to give a 55% chance to the Bearcats here. Then they're hosting the Cougars of BYU. BYU is one of the top four teams in the Big 12, in our opinions. It's BYU, Arizona State, Iowa State, Kansas State. And BYU obviously is returning Jake Retzlaff at quarterback after a very solid season last year. Started off, I think, 9-0 before starting to tumble a little bit down the stretch, but got that signature and very stylish win over Colorado in their bowl game. So this BYU team is gonna be in a similar situation to last year. It's be interesting to see if BYU can make a push for the college football playoffs next year and not have that same collapse towards the end of the season. But in comparison to Cincinnati, the talent discrepancy is very large. I don't give Cincinnati much of a chance in this one just because it's at home. Maybe you're in for some upsets, especially with BYU's ability to fumble down the stretch. But a 25% chance for the Bearcats is where we're going to have it right now. And then they finish the year off on the road against the Horned Frogs at TCU. Much like Baylor, we are very high on this TCU team. They're losing a lot of their receiver room, but they do have their starting quarterback returning. And in a very loaded Big 12 conference that's known for its chaos, I think this TCU team is one of those teams that can emerge from all that chaos, from that rubble, and possibly be a dark horse team to make the college football playoffs, or at least be in competition to compete for that Big 12 championship. And much like BYU, I don't see Cincinnati being able to hold up against the talent that TCU has and is bringing in. It's going to be an uphill battle for here, especially with it being on the road. I really don't see the Bearcats standing much of a chance in this one, especially at the end of the season after what will most likely be a deflating BYU game, giving the Bearcats only a 15% chance to get a win on the road there.
Yeah, just looking at this schedule, I'm really only seeing a few games that I would be confident picking Cincinnati in. I mean, obviously you got Bowling Green, Northwestern State. Those both should be wins. Other than that, maybe they pick up two Big 12 wins. I know they're favored in three games. I wouldn't be surprised if they drop one of those. Maybe they pick up a win somewhere else. But I mean, I'm thinking 4-8 to 5-7, maybe at the most.
Yeah, that's right around where I am. I think the only reason we have them favored against teams like UCF, Oklahoma State, and Arizona, even though Arizona is just slightly, it's because they finished ahead of those teams in the Big 12 standings last season. I don't know enough about those teams to really say if they've improved any more than they did last year, or at least to compete against a team like Cincinnati. So those are really the only teams I could see them getting wins against in the Big 12 standings. Bowling Green and Northwestern State are probably the only other games I see them winning, but everything else, I really don't have a lot of faith in this Cincinnati team. It's unfortunate because I mean we saw they were the first they were still a group of five team, right? When they made the college football playoffs, what was it?
Yeah.
4 years ago? Yeah, they were the first group of five team to make that college football playoffs. Like it's just been such a downhill spiral since then, and I feel bad for Cincinnati, but this season's not going to help their case.
Yeah, I definitely think they are in for a bit of a rough year. Like we were saying last season, 5-7 was the final record. And our projected record for this year is actually 5.8 and 6.2. So it is pretty close to 500. There's a good chance that maybe if they pull off a couple of these upsets, that they could make a bowl game. The odds are just a little bit against it though. Our prediction, like we said, we're gonna go with 4-8 for now. There's maybe a little bit of room for improvement. We're gonna definitely check out some tape from Brendan Sorsby this spring. See, if he improves quite a bit, maybe there's a chance Cincinnati could in fact make a bowl game. Looking at the over/under from Vegas, it is at 6.5. The under is slightly favored, but it seems like Vegas is feeling pretty good about Cincinnati making a bowl game, which is definitely interesting. Gonna have to disagree with them a bit on that. But we will be updating these predictions later in the summer, so please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on that video, and we'll see you in the next one.